I can be an angry person. As soon as I say that, I'm amazed at my need to deny it. I don't want you to see me as an angry person. I want you to like me, but when I show my anger, I'm afraid you won't. So I've learned to hide my anger by flashing a smile. Newsflash, don't trust anyone who always smiles and tells you everything is okay. These are the same people who will be nice to you when you're present, but will betray you behind your back. Such a person is living by a double standard, for what you see on the outside is not what is really happening on the inside. I know I can be an angry person, but to be honest, I'm afraid of my anger. My fear is that it's a monster, and once released, it will take over my life. I've seen this happen to others, and frankly, it scares me. Angry people do not come across as happy people, and they certainly struggle to keep what few friends they have. I know when I do show my anger, I experience rejection far more than acceptance. I don't like anger, and I certainly don't know what to do with it. If this dialogue describes you, then this session will be a significant step forward in your journey of allowing forgiveness to change your life. When I think of anger, I'm reminded of the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. The porridge was either too hot or too cold, or it was just right. And so it is with anger. Anger that is too hot will boil over into rage, and anger that is too cold will not provide you with the needed energy to act, causing you to keep everything bottled up inside. And over time, holding in all your upset feelings can lead to despair and even depression. But anger that is just right will be expressed appropriately and directly. How do you handle your anger? Are you a hothead? Do you keep it all boiled up inside? Or are you cool and direct with your expressions? When someone has wronged you, you will experience an overwhelming desire to make things right. This is understandable, for we all want life to be fair. But when life isn't fair, and there's nothing you can do about it, you will often end up with anger. Why is it that anger can be so difficult to deal with? Well, for one thing, most of us have not had many good experiences in either expressing our anger or being on the receiving end of another's anger. In fact, you may have been taught that anger is wrong. Remember as a child when you did express your anger, how you were sent to your room and told not to come back until you could replace your anger with a more pleasant attitude? Or you may have observed a parent or a relative explode with anger and it scared you half to death. Most of us simply have not had a good role model on how to appropriately deal with our anger. Given all the difficulties associated with anger, you may wonder if anger really is wrong. Let me assert that there is nothing wrong with the emotion of anger. It is not anger itself that is the problem. Rather, it is how anger is expressed and how long it is retained that is the problem. For you see, the purpose of any emotion is to inform you and call you to action. If you are angry, it means something is wrong and you need to do something about it. In this way, owning and being aware of your anger is beneficial. What is important to understand is that feelings follow thoughts. So if you feel angry, pay careful attention to what you are thinking about. Then you can make a more informed decision on how to act and thus respond to your anger's root cause. The problem with the word anger is that most people will substitute the word rage in its place because that was what we most commonly associate with anger. But when I use the word anger, I'm talking about a range of feelings that vary in intensity. Think of anger like a thermometer. At the coolest level, you experience annoyance. You are aware that something is bothering you, but it's not a big deal. As it gets hotter, you become more irritated and hopefully motivated to do something to change the situation. But if left unaddressed, that irritation can boil over into full-blown rage. And if left unchecked or suppressed, those feelings will convert to resentment and the desire for revenge. We are now at the real danger level of anger. The other problem with anger, or any emotion we perceive as negative, is that it gets amplified in our head. This is because we are more attuned to negative statements about us than positive ones. Research on human emotion has identified that it can take 4 positive statements to balance the impact of just one negative statement. Think about that. When someone says 5 things about you, one of which was negative, which statement do you dwell on for the rest of the day? If you're like most of us, that negative statement will play over and over in your head as you try to figure out what that person meant by that negative statement. And this is why anger can be a difficult emotion to deal with. It tends to play over and over again in your head to the point you just want to explode. Recognizing that anger is all around you and that you will have to deal with it on a daily basis, what are some helpful ways to express your anger? You have 3 basic choices. You can express your anger either passively, as revealed by such behaviors as ignoring, wishing, withdrawing, accommodating, and avoiding. Or you can express it aggressively, as revealed by such behaviors as attacking, forcing, criticizing, controlling, and harming others. Or you can express it assertively, as revealed by such behaviors as confronting, being honest, stating expectations, and setting boundaries. If you want to express your anger most effectively, choose the assertive option. Assertiveness takes responsibility, not necessarily for what happened, but for what will happen in the future. Healthy assertiveness allows you to express to the people around you how you feel and what you expect without attacking them. Most importantly, dealing with your anger in an assertive way paves the way for forgiveness, while passive and aggressive responses tend to make forgiveness more difficult. If you have trouble admitting your anger, can you acknowledge that you've been hurt? Probably. So consider this fact. Most experts consider anger a response to hurt. We get angry when we've been hurt. In other words, anger is a signal alerting us to some hurt we've suffered, even if we can't immediately identify what that hurt might be. In this way, anger and hurt are 2 sides of the same coin. So the anger you are experiencing is a response to your hurt. It may be difficult to talk about what is upsetting you, but can you talk about what is hurting you? The good news is that most people tend to listen to hurt more readily than they do to anger. This is because the expression of hurt makes them less defensive than does the outpouring of anger. It can be almost impossible to meter out anger in small, digestible bites. Rather, it tends to come pouring out in overwhelming amounts. Anger, therefore, can be tricky to express. But you need to find a way to express yourself when angry. Your anger is an important message indicating that something is wrong and serves as a reminder that we need to act. Anger also gives us the energy to act. Anger enables us to assert ourselves, and the result can be a greater sense of self-worth. These are all the good things about anger. But all this potential good can be wiped out in an instant when I let my anger just gush out and come across as an attack on the other person. So, how do I get control of my anger? After the break, I will give you some practical advice on this.
Retained anger and hostility has been shown to be directly linked to adverse health outcomes such as cardiovascular disease. A retrospective study conducted at the University of North Carolina investigated the incidence of lifestyle diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, or hypertension in medical students that had graduated 25 years prior. Each student had undertaken a Myers-Briggs test before graduation, which included as part of its assessment an anger and hostility scale. The results of these were obtained from school records and grouped according to high or low anger expression rates. The incidence of hypertension in medical graduates with high anger and hostility rates were found to be 7 times higher. Mortality rates in this group were also 4 times higher. The conclusion from this study is that anger is indeed a high predictor of heart disease. So what mechanisms can explain the phenomena between anger expression and adverse physical health problems? Our thoughts and feelings are intimately connected with our physical being, and we experience our feelings through the release of powerful hormones in our endocrine system. They can make us feel joyful, such as when endorphins are released, or they can make us feel angry and stressed, such as when cortisol is released from the adrenal glands. Some effects of cortisol include raising our heart rates and providing the energy needed to increase muscle activity to prepare us for a fight or a flight response. As the muscles contract, they build pressure around the blood vessels, which in turn increase overall blood pressure. In the short term, cortisol is a vital hormone to help us act in a flight or fight response to perceived threats in our daily lives. But in the long term, if we continue to have elevated levels of cortisol in our body, it can work against us by causing physical problems such as chronically elevated blood pressure. It can also cause raised LDL cholesterol, which is a component known to be a major contributor of plaque formation, leading to blocked arteries. These blocked arteries can in turn become a major cause of stroke and heart disease. Chronic high blood pressure or hypertension is a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease, and its development can be due to genetic, environmental, and lifestyle factors. Psychological factors that include suppressed anger and hostility are also a major contributor. Retaining grudges and rehearsing hurt can increase the activity of sympathetic nervous system, which in turn increases blood vessel wall resistance and causes, again, overall elevated blood pressure. Studies have shown that changing our negative thought processes and applying forgiveness can lead to a reduction in anger, which in turn can cause a reversal of these sympathetic physiological responses. One such study conducted by Dr. Tibbetts demonstrated this by setting up an 8-week forgiveness training program. This clinical trial investigated whether people with an established diagnosis of hypertension that also rated high on a standardized anger expression inventory would receive any significant benefit after participating in the program. Results showed that participants with high anger levels showed a significant drop in anger expression to more normal ranges. Furthermore, a positive correlation was also seen between reduction in anger expression and reduction in blood pressure within this group, with those showing the largest drops in anger expression also showing corresponding larger drops in blood pressure. As you can see, long-standing retained anger and hostility can have some serious effects on our physical health, but it can also have pretty serious effects on our social and psychological health as well. Even just one brief act of aggression can cause long-term serious consequences that lead to deep regret and shame. It's not that the emotion of anger is wrong, but it's the festering and retaining of this emotion over a long period that can lead to some terrible consequences. I once saw a patient that had just been released from serving several years in prison after committing a serious crime because of ongoing anger that they had tried to deal with themselves. Their anger was directed towards someone who had abused them in their childhood, and they tried to cope with the repercussions of this privately. They explained that their anger grew more and more intense through the years, festering to a point where they became angry with the world in general, and then, like a volcano, erupted with one aggressive act that then led to their imprisonment. This patient shared deep regret over this incident and wished they could have gone back in time to seek help before it was too late. Anger is a much harder emotion to control, particularly if long-standing. It is important, therefore, to have a plan of action to help avoid aggressive outbursts that you may regret later. Dr. Tibbetts talks about taking slow, deep breaths when you feel the anger rising inside. Even just physically stopping in your tracks can send a cue to the brain to stop stimulating the response pathway that fuels your anger. If you feel that your anger is out of control, consider seeking help from a professional that can discuss and identify the source of your anger and offer suggestions to cope with this emotional expression of your hurt. However, after identifying the source of your anger, the ultimate decision to set you free from the uncontrolled anger expression is yours. It is the decision to forgive or not. As discussed in these seminars, the journey of forgiveness is a much better option. You will start to feel more in control of your life and live your present and future with freedom and without regrets.
The first step of gaining control over your anger is to own your anger. It is yours, and you need to deal with it. So often I hear the phrase, "You make me so angry," as if my anger is someone else's responsibility. When this happens, you are headed down the wrong pathway. Let me illustrate it this way. Here is one way to think about my anger. You make me angry, so you are responsible for my feelings of pain. So, you must do something to make me feel better. And if you refuse to help me, I will resent you for the rest of my life. Can you see how this leaves me holding the bag filled with anger, which has nowhere to go except to boil over inside? On the other hand, here is a more effective pathway for your anger to travel. I make me angry, so you do not determine my response. So I can choose my response and do what is best for me. And no matter what you do, I am free to forgive and to live life my way. The path you choose will determine where you end. Have you ever noticed that some people seem to be angry all the time? It is almost like they are full of anger, so that at the slightest provocation, they are set off. The truth is, you cannot store anger. There is no pouch or container inside your body where anger can be stored. So why do some get angry so quickly? While you cannot store anger, you can and do store memories. And if that memory is hurtful, the anger will come roaring back with that memory. Remember, I told you feelings follow thoughts? So if you're constantly thinking about someone who has harmed you, your anger will be just below the surface, ready at a moment's notice to come roaring out. In this way, people are viewed as being full of anger. And this leads to what I consider the most dangerous aspect of anger, and that is resentment. Resentment is the recalling of a grievance that has happened to you in the past. And this recall brings back to the surface the anger attached to it. Simply put, the stronger the memory, the stronger the feeling associated with that memory. So, to heal your emotions, you need to learn how to heal your memories. Let me assure you that time does not heal all wounds. There are wounds that are not healed by time, which can only be healed by forgiveness. The problem with resentment is that it destroys your emotional and physical health. That is why getting angry is less of a problem than remaining angry. Retained anger destroys your mental health because unexpressed anger is one of the root causes of depression. Retained anger destroys our relationships because people don't like to be around someone who's angry all the time. And retained anger destroys your physical health because anger releases powerful hormones into your system that can cause chronic health conditions like hypertension, ulcers, headaches, joint pain, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic fatigue, and a host of other physical ailments. In fact, public health policies around the world recognize anger as a significant risk factor for heart disease. So understand, the anger you are holding on to is killing you. Now, ask yourself the question, is it worth it to hold on to your anger? This is just another reason why forgiveness is so important. So what do you do when you know in your head you should forgive, but you're so full of hurt and anger that emotionally you simply cannot forgive? Recognize your feeling, then choose to forgive anyway. And if you are so emotionally overwhelmed that you simply cannot bring yourself to forgive, remind yourself that when the emotion subsides, you can come back to forgiveness. To help slow things down and regain some emotional control, try this helpful tip. Breathe deeply and slowly until you can regain control of your thoughts and feelings. When you breathe, it is helpful to relax and let go of your thoughts and emotions with each exhale. It is on the exhale that you get the full relaxation benefit. To further enhance this experience, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Why is this important? Think of your nasal passages like a radiator in your car. Your brain is cooled by passing the cooler outside air through your nasal passages, which are right next to your brain. And if your nasal passages get plugged, you quickly realize how beneficial they are to keeping everything open and flowing. This biological reality is also reflected in the language we use. When someone is angry, we call that person a hothead. Or when someone is more level-headed, we call them cool. These word images actually describe what happens with the temperature of your brain. It is also helpful to exercise to expend some of that excess energy. The time it takes you to exercise can buy you time to think about your options. Then confront the situation and share how the other's actions have impacted you. When you do so, state as objectively as you can your point of view, and be careful to use I statements rather than you statements. For example, I feel like I am not important when you come home late without letting me know. Instead of, you don't care one bit about me or you would have called. I statements talk about what I need, not about what you must do for me. Being assertive means you are willing to set clear boundaries. If you say no, then mean it. Don't give in for the sake of peace when you know you'll only regret it afterwards. When necessary, establish consequences, as this will reinforce that you mean what you say. Boundaries and consequences for violating those boundaries are important expressions of your anger. And don't be fooled when the offender says, "What's the matter? Don't you trust me?" Just remind them that while forgiveness is free, trust must be earned. If the other person cares about you, they will respect your wishes. And if they don't care about you, it is better that you keep the distance between the two of you. So what does managing anger have to do with forgiveness? When you don't forgive, anger will start to fill your heart and soul. You must be able to reduce these angry feelings if you are to get to forgiveness. While forgiveness will diminish your anger, sometimes you have to reduce your anger before you can begin to forgive. So the two work together. Lowering your anger helps you better able to forgive, and forgiving helps you to lower your anger. It is a true win-win proposition. I invite you to join your facilitator as you open your workbooks to Session 5 and discover how forgiveness can positively impact your emotional as well as physical health. Today's subject may be especially difficult for you. Be patient with yourself. Don't try to fix everything that has been wrong in your life in one night. If you find yourself getting overwhelmed by your feelings, don't be afraid to seek help. It is better to deal with those things now than to let them continue to simmer. So stick with it, and you will experience the amazing healing power of forgiveness.